This image here is from an ad series run in the early 1960s by Motorola for their televisions. I really love these pictures of the future. I'm not sure whether it's post-global warming, but there appears to be a boy swimming past the window. My name is Matt Webb. I run Berg, which is a design studio in London. Earlier this year, we created Mag Plus, which is a digital magazine publishing platform for the iPad with our clients, Bonnier. It came out on the launch day of the iPad, and the first magazine, Popular Science, was out that day. There are 2 more magazines released last week. We're a product invention company. Inventing is weird because you have to create for a world which doesn't exist yet. And by inventing, you kind of drag the world in that direction a little bit. When we invented Mag Plus, the iPad hadn't even been announced. So being an inventing company, I like looking at trends and trying to figure out where the world is going. And I'm trying out a new area today, so thank you very much for inviting me. It's at these kind of events that I get to talk with the kind of smart people who I can try ideas out and steal stuff from. There's a couple of people who have already talked about what it means to be a designer, so I thought I'd kind of throw in my point. This is from my business partner, Jack Schultz. And he says this thing, and I think I've maybe overused this slide a little, so this is probably the last time I'll use it, but one more time. Some people, they are wrong. Jack can speak in brackets. Some people, they are wrong, say design is about solving problems. Obviously, designers do solve problems, but then so do dentists. Design is about cultural invention. What Jack says is that design has to invent, has to create new ways of doing things, and to contribute to culture. I don't believe this is true for all kinds of design, but it is true for my particular company, our particular company. This is from 1979. It's a living room of their future, of the future of 1979. There's a flat screen TV which you use to order shopping. There's a video disc player that you use to record television. And there's a mail slot, because although they had the idea that mail was going to go electronic, there was still the idea that you would write everything on paper and show it up to a camera, where it be flashed up to a satellite and reprinted at the other end. So they hadn't predicted that paper and discs would be replaced by digital storage, and that broadcast and point-to-point would replace the network, which goes to show that predicting the future is a fool's game, which is why I'm going to try it. I'm going to try and answer this question in the next few slides, and start by looking at the biggest trend of all, which is from Count Alfred Habdank Skarbek-Korbisky. He's a Polish-American philosopher, and in 1947, he classified all of life into 3 categories. Category 1 is energy binding. So energy binding is the first step up from chemical molecules. It's just a bundle of cleverly assembled chemical pathways and catalysts. Plants have the ability to store energy and to bind it and to operate on it, to use that energy to produce organization, which can be used to store more energy and create more organization from it. So plants are energy binding. Step 2, space binding. Animals have the ability to move through space. Animals have the ability of controlled movement, to move towards energy or other goals. So at every moment they make decisions based on their situation and context, mobile life. And category 3 are humans, time-binding creatures. We have the ability not just to store energy and not just to move towards energy, but to build up learning over time. We're cultural animals. We have the ability to see cause and effect and to use our knowledge to build more knowledge. Humans capture time and turn it into machines that capture energy. We learn. So let's apply this same biggest trend to computers. Energy binding, the mainframe, sitting there hoarding our Shannon information and processing it somehow, producing organization to capture more information. Space binding, mobile phones, aware of their position, their geographic location, their position in your social network. What about time binding, the third category? Is it ubiquitous computing or the Internet of Things, like, who knows? Actually, I have no idea. Robots? I mean, like, really, who knows? I mean, that's kind of what I'm here to talk about. But maybe it is this, you know? I don't know, has anybody here seen an AnyBot? Have you heard of this? A few, okay. So an AnyBot is basically a Segway with a broom handle on the top, and at the end of the broom handle is a webcam and a green laser pointer. And you drive it through your web browser remotely. It's only compatible with Firefox on the Mac at the moment, which is, I find quirky somehow. There have been telepresence robots before, but what's unique about AnyBots is it only costs $15,000. It's out this year, and it's used for really mundane purposes, like joining meetings. The video they have to advertise this is not like, you know, you can go into Afghanistan and check out a territory without being shot, and it's not bomb disposal, it's not remote surgery, it's your colleagues are having a whiteboard session and you need to join, and look, it has a green laser so you can point at what you're talking about. I love that it's so mundane. This is glow caps. I was surprised last night to find out that quite a few people had heard of glow caps. So who has heard of glow caps? Yeah, more people. I really love this product. This is the Internet of Things come to life. And when the Internet of Things or ubiquitous computing come to our world, they won't be called the Internet of Things or ubiquitous computing. They'll just be networked, instrumented caps for medicine bottles that play a ringtone when it's time for you to take your pills. Interestingly, the technology is not targeted at people who need to take their medicine. It's targeted at insurance companies, because it's the best way for an insurance company to protect their investment, my health, by making sure I take my medicine. Being networked, they're able to build in social incentives and financial incentives to people who take their medicine on time, and they're able to make it so that you can tell a trusted one when you're supposed to take your medicine. If you haven't, then you can phone up your grandmother and say, hey, why didn't you take your pills last night? So there's something about this kind of networked, very small technology being used to do very, very important things. AnyBots and glow caps I would class as being part of this third category of time-binding information machines that comes into the world, these after mobile machines. And so it's worth looking at these kind of things a bit closer. So the answer to my original question is that what comes after mobile is more mobile. Because the way we design for AnyBots and glow caps is similar to how we design for mobile now. They have to take into account geographic context, and they have to take into account who you know and privacy, because they're in a space, there's no protected physical location. They have to be usable over 30 minutes for immersive use, or 30 seconds for glanceable use. So there's a lot of similarities, but these things are also very different. Cloud, embedded, networks, Internet of Things, all of these are just technologies. And this is what makes this third category so different, is that we haven't got a name for it yet. These names of technologies don't give us any clues for how to design for them, how to design these future media and services, and how we as humans relate to these things. So I have 4 clues, and I'm going to spend my time going through 4 clues about what these products are in the future that we design. There's that old Indian story about the blind men touching the elephant, you know, and you know, one man says, oh, it's like a rope, and another man says, oh, it's like a tree trunk, oh, it's like a wall. But they're all talking about the same elephant. So I don't know what my particular elephant is yet, but I do have these 4 clues about what it might be. So let's take a look at what they are. My first clue is something I've run across called Chernoff faces. Chernoff faces are an idea from psychology that we're much better at understanding human expression as faces than we are understanding lists of numbers. So these faces represent baseball statistics. Hits is eyes and nose height, home runs is width, hair and smiler's win percentage, I imagine you would notice very quickly if somebody had a very, very wide face like this. So I think that's the idea. The reason it's useful is we, as human beings, are more able to pick out emotional facial expression in a crowd than we are a high number in a list of numbers. And emotion is infectious. We feel happy when we see happy faces, and we get angry when we see angry faces. We used this technique recently in a project using UK government data about schools called Schooloscope. And the reports about schools in the UK are very, very long. Pages and pages and pages of text and numbers. What we did is we wrapped that up into a single icon. If the kids at the school are happy, the school has a happy face. If the exam results are bad, the roof is red. If it's good, the roof is green. If the exam results are in between, the roof is orange. And you can see over the side there, there's another school which is trying to compete with the one on the main page, but is not doing so well. He's like, oh, my kids aren't as happy. And you can see that because he has a sad face. So faces are ways of creating understanding in very easy ways, and people are beginning to do that now. So that's my kind of clue one. Clue two is that people are beginning to use hard math for trivial things. These are two iPhone apps that I really like at the moment. One is Sudoku Grab. It uses augmented reality to pick up a Sudoku puzzle from the newspaper, machine vision to figure out what the puzzle looks like, neural networks to figure out what the numbers are, and then it just solves it using plain maths. Good. On the right is Red Laser, which scans barcodes and tells you what they are. Now, the smart bit about Red Laser is not that it scans barcodes. It's that if it can't tell what the barcode is, it sends it off to Mechanical Turk. I don't know, you know Mechanical Turk? It's basically 100,000 Polynesians and people in the American Midwest waiting at their computers to answer simple questions for 5 cents, right? So Red Laser back their iPhone app onto this. And we're like, yeah, fine. Like, what? A neural network on my phone and a big algorithm that runs in the crowd and then backs on to 50,000 workers just like scattered over the globe. This is insane. And it's not even kind of solving global happiness or making sure that everyone is fed, right? It's just Sudoku puzzles. And sorry for showing so many of my own projects, but this is another example. This is an app called Shonar website, which just tells you what to watch on television this evening on BBC, telly or radio, based on how many people are discussing it. But it doesn't actually tell you what people are discussing the most, because people always discuss the biggest programs. What it does is it scrapes 100 million blogs and all of Twitter and looks for mentions of any of 8,000 BBC telly and radio programs. It builds an internal predictive model of how much discussion that program is going to get. It learns over time, and then it tells you at the top which one is getting most discussion and says you should watch that. We employed a guy who writes fraud prevention algorithms for Visa. What? This statistical technique was only invented 15 years ago. It was only possible to run on a server 5 years ago, and now we're running it 4 times a day? I don't know what's going on in this world, but the fact that we can point the global computing capacity of 15 years ago at really trivial problems is an interesting clue. Clue 3 is fractional artificial intelligence. This is maybe too small to see. I read toy catalogs a lot. This is maybe too small to see. These are hamsters, toy hamsters, and they have 2 features they call out. One is hilarious sounds. The second is artificially intelligent. There's a lot of AI around at the moment. But let me try and get home to you how incredible this is. You get this hamster for £9.99. Let's take that to US dollars, that's 15 bucks. The shop takes 60 bucks. That takes us down to $5.60. It's difficult that you're going to be able to make this yourself. So you have to go to Hasbro or Mattel, and they're going to take another 60%. So you're down to, let's see, a bit under $2 to manufacture this hamster after you've taken care of shipping from China and packaging. Now, out of your $2, you've got child safety, making sure it's not going to catch fire or poison your pets. Those are all important things, but they cost money. And you're trying to make 100,000 of them. And in the end, what you've got is a chip in there which costs you 7 cents. And in that 7 cents, you have to pack not only artificial intelligence, but hilarious sounds. Artificial intelligence has become a commodity. Like, when did that even happen? Virtual pets are everywhere. I don't know how much intelligence something has to have before we start feeling it's intelligent, but the fact it's possible now, and so easy, is something interesting and trending. It is something new. I'm not entirely sure what we do with it. My last item is chatty interfaces. Chatty interfaces. This is, let's see, Andy Stanford Clark. Andy's house. He's a researcher at IBM who hooked up everything in his house to a Twitter stream. So not only does it say how much the water the house is using, I mean, it's not weirdly obsessive. It's quite cool, right? His house says how much water it's using, and it says how much electricity, and the security system is on. It also tells him when he misses the phone. And this is the nice bit. When he misses the phone, it direct messages him the number of the phone call that he missed, so he can call it back. It's really nice. His entire house is like a helpful butler. So when I talk about conversational user interfaces, I don't mean like HAL out of 2001, where you can play chess and have a deep, involved philosophical conversation, and then he throws you out the spaceship. I mean that you don't have to talk to the lighting subsystem and the security subsystem and the telephone subsystem. I mean that just you can say what you want in some kind of constrained syntax, and a fractional AI takes over, answers your question, and gives it back to you in the most appropriate way. This is my favorite interface at the moment, which does just that. Lanyard is a social network for people who go to conferences, like here. You go to the website, sign up, you find a conference, you hit the button, you say which one you've gone to, you join Twitter, it tells you what your friends are going to. That's old school. What they do is you just Twitter @lanyard attend #momoams. It automatically creates you an account. It automatically says you're going to that conference. The next thing that happens after I go to the website after this is it tells me what all my friends go to, what the related conferences are. That's a conversational user interface. Short circuit all the chaff. So what does this mean? What's at the intersection of these four things? I don't know what we call it. Bots 2.0? Not very smartphones? Like, it's not clear to me, but you know, Webb 2.0 came out of a weird convergence of things as well. Webb 2.0 came out of Ruby on Rails, making it easy to develop. It came out of tagging as a way of getting rid of the hierarchy-laden websites that we'd been making so far. It came out of having social networks as a feature in everything. There was no way you would put these things together, yet suddenly they did come together, and they gave us a whole new industry approach and a whole new way of designing things. So when I see these trends, two of which are newly possible, and two of which are upcoming, I think maybe there's something there. To wrap that up, what does it mean? Does that mean all our products have to have faces? Does it mean I can't get my milk out of my fridge unless I ask it how its night was in the morning? Maybe. But I don't think so. What I'm saying is that simple intelligence means that we have simple interfaces that we can relate to in really simple human ways, as one time-binding intelligence to another time-binding intelligence. And what I am pointing out is that the principles we take for granted in designing mobile apps at the moment come from an era where chips were too simple to be smart. And the business world was too boring and too obsessed with buttons to let what we use every day be fun. Just as cheap oil let there be an explosion of cheap plastic products, cheap computation will let there be an explosion of smart products and smart interfaces. So we have these new colors to paint with and new technologies to invent with, and the mobile future is still mobile. But it also has this possibility of being incredibly, incredibly different. Now, this is just an observation. but I guess it's a question too. Because given these new possibilities, given these new technologies, these new paints, what should we be designing? And if I look to anyone to answer that question, it's going to be you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we have time for questions. More than enough time for questions. So who dares? Oh, there's one. So we have only one mic. One more? Here.
Hello, Mr. Webb. Thanks a lot for your inspiring talk. I'm Chris Hanselaar. I've got a small company which provides websites with relevant content. I was wondering, when people were working on the Manhattan Project, at least they were realizing themselves, they were working on an atom bomb. Currently, technology is such a driving force that I cannot avoid technology. For instance, when we're talking about the public transport chip card in the Netherlands, we're all stuck with a lousy chip card, and when I forget to log out of my tram, it will cost me €4. So there's a lot of technology helping us, but it's as well not helping us. And I was wondering, you're enabling companies and people like us to use technology, and technology therefore will be part of our life and hardly avoidable. But what if I want to be left out? What if I don't want to have anything at all to do with technology? If I don't want to use a chip card? If I don't want to use my telephone to open a door? If I don't want companies to have my info on how my health is, which pills I'm using and not? And to use a metaphor, a tree doesn't fall down because it can bend. A plane doesn't drop down because its wings can bend. Where in a system where every data is collected and used, where's the flexibility in order to have us not fall down? So, are you a genie or a genius in a master in a project like a Manhattan Project? Where are you heading us to?
Nice. There is a very thin line between helpful and super creepy. Too many of our applications are on the wrong side of the line. And as scientists, the people in the Manhattan Project had been dodging the question about what was ethically okay for about 150 years. Since the establishment of the Royal Institution in the UK, in order to get funding from the establishment, they had made a promise to stay out of politics. The promise to stay out of politics was because the politicians held the money. We no longer have that obligation. We no longer need people's money to be involved in technology. The promise no longer stands. We have an obligation to call out designers and technologists who are doing things on the wrong side of the line. And it's something we all have to do. So the way we make sure that we build technology which doesn't freak people out, which doesn't infringe privacy, is we have to hold each other as designers and technologists to higher standards. Now, what does that actually mean? I would like for there to be sessions at conferences like this one about ethics. I went to my first conference over the summer, which had a session explicitly about technology and philosophy. And it was the best attended session of the entire conference. So more of that. If anyone here runs conferences, maybe we should talk about it afterwards, because I have a couple of ideas, and I think it's a fantastic point. We need to pay more attention to it. Thank you.
Hi. You mentioned lots of computer power and smart people are building really useless stuff. I've noticed that too, especially like a couple of years ago I was working on Facebook applications and I looked at the API and I thought, wow, you can do such wonderful things with this Facebook technology, and yet people only build sheep throwing applications. So do you have any idea why it's happening or what we can do to stimulate people to use those technologies to build something useful a bit more?
It's interesting. That's a good observation, because I think it's a very important trend. About 20 years ago to about 60 years ago, all the important advances in computation came from business. Everything we have is a domestication of industrial processes. The washing machine is the domestication of the factory. The laptop with Gmail is a domestication of desktop computers at work and Lotus Notes or something. The mobile phone, a domestication of the telephone used in business. What we have now is that the space for innovation is the home, the everyday, and fun. It comes from games consoles. It comes from toys. It comes from things that make our days more enjoyable. The cutting edge of technology is not the stuff you get in big factories, but is the iPad and the iPhone. What that means is there's going to be a lot more wasted time. But instead of wasted time, let's just call it play. But it's a liberation. It means that stuff doesn't need to be useful. It just needs to make our lives more fun. And sometimes that means more effective. And sometimes that just means quirky and weird. Both are good. But the playfulness is important, I think.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. What you're saying right now, play and maybe movement as well, isn't that like the, sorry for saying that, the Xbox Kinect? Isn't it just a great example maybe?
The Xbox Kinect is a wonderful example. I've lost count of how many times I've used that example in the consultancy work recently. I think play is not necessarily games. Play is not necessarily scores and shooting things or solving puzzles. Play is the ability to try something out and make mistakes with no consequences. The applications we have that come from the business world are very, very punishing. If I make a mistake using PowerPoint or Microsoft Word, then I lose my document, I would love to be able to, even when I'm using Excel to run my business, I'd love to be able to drop into a play mode and experiment with no fear that anything is going to go wrong. Xbox Kinect is really lovely because it has some very gentle ways of involving people. So yeah, I think we have more to learn than we think, than by looking at Xbox, Argos, what people are doing in the home.
Thanks.
More questions?
What is the best question you have ever had?
Hi, Mr. Webb. I'm sorry, I know you're really busy, but can I buy you a beer?
Well, that's a good line. Thank you, Webb.